She didn't hesitate when I asked. She didn't cry, didn't deny it, didn't even look nervous. She just nodded and said, "Yes, I cheated." Her voice was flat, almost bored, like she was confirming something minor. No apology followed. No explanation. No guilt. I waited for emotion that never came. Instead, she added, "I don't regret it." I felt nothing. Hearing that was surreal, not because of the affair itself, but because of how little it seemed to matter to her. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't afraid. She was calm, completely detached. In that moment, something inside me shut down. I realized this conversation wasn't a turning point. It was an ending. The marriage wasn't collapsing. It had already collapsed, quietly, long before I asked the question. When I asked how she could say it so casually, she shrugged and replied, "It's already done. I'm not going to pretend to feel bad." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just stood there, understanding with sudden clarity that the woman in front of me felt no responsibility for the damage she caused. That was when I knew this was over. Not angrily, not dramatically, calmly. Before the betrayal, our marriage looked stable, almost boring in a good way. We had routines, shared responsibilities, plans that felt solid. Nothing dramatic, nothing obviously broken. I believed that kind of quiet consistency meant safety. We talked about the future like it was guaranteed. Vacations we hadn't taken yet. Goals we assumed we'd reach together. I trusted her in the everyday moments, the ordinary mornings, the familiar evenings, because trust felt earned over time. I showed up in ways I thought mattered. I was reliable, present, committed. I believed loyalty was proven through consistency, not grand gestures. And for a long time, I thought she valued that too. Looking back now, I see how much I confused familiarity with intimacy. We functioned well, but something deeper was missing. The marriage didn't end with cheating. It ended earlier, when emotional connection quietly faded and I mistook stability for love. The changes didn't arrive loudly. They slipped in quietly, easy to dismiss if you weren't looking too closely. She started keeping her phone closer, turning the screen away when I walked by, taking it with her everywhere. I noticed. I just chose not to react. Her schedule shifted without real explanation. Later nights. More time out. When I asked, her answers were short, casual, designed to end the conversation. I told myself it was work, stress, life. I didn't want to be the guy who questioned everything. Affection faded in small ways. Less eye contact. Fewer spontaneous touches. Conversations felt thinner, like they were missing something essential. I felt the distance, but convinced myself it was temporary. Each change on its own meant very little. Together, they formed a pattern I wasn't ready to see. I ignored it not because I was blind, but because acknowledging it would have forced me to admit that something was already wrong, and I wasn't prepared for what that truth might cost me. The red flags were there, clear enough that, looking back, it feels almost embarrassing how hard I worked to excuse them. She became defensive over nothing. Simple questions turned into accusations. If I asked where she'd been, she'd sigh like I was exhausting, like I was the problem for even wondering. She started rewriting small moments from our past. Things I remembered clearly suddenly happened differently in her version. I doubted myself more than her. I told myself memory was flexible, that relationships evolve, that maybe I was holding on to an outdated version of us. There were emotional gaps I couldn't explain. She laughed more at her phone than with me. Her mood lifted after texts she wouldn't share. When I noticed, she brushed it off, said I was reading into things, that I needed to relax. Every instinct told me something was off. But instead of trusting it, I negotiated with it. I minimized what I felt, because accepting those red flags would have meant admitting I was losing her, and I wasn't ready to face that yet. The first real moment something cracked wasn't dramatic. That's what scared me. It was quiet, almost invisible, which made it harder to ignore. We were sitting in the same room, but it felt like we were miles apart. I said something small, nothing important, and she didn't react at all. No annoyance, no warmth, just nothing. That emptiness stayed with me. I started noticing how often she seemed emotionally unavailable, like her body was present, but her attention belonged somewhere else. Conversations felt one-sided. I filled the silence while she nodded, distracted, already gone. One night, she came home unusually calm. Not tired, not stressed. Calm in a way that didn't belong to us anymore. I remember thinking, she's already resolved something I don't know about. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just distance or routine. It felt intentional, like a decision had been made without me, and I was the last person to find out. After that moment, her behavior didn't explode into obvious red flags. It tilted. Small things moved just enough to feel wrong. She became careful with her phone, not secretive in a dramatic way, just aware of it. Screen turned down. Notifications silenced. A new habit of stepping into another room to reply to messages she used to answer right in front of me. She stopped sharing details about her day. When I asked, I got summaries instead of stories. Work was fine. Nothing much happened. The intimacy of everyday life faded, replaced by emotional efficiency. Physical affection became mechanical. Hugs felt brief. Kisses felt automatic. There was no tension, no conflict, just a lack of presence. She wasn't pulling away in anger. She was disconnecting with intention. The strangest part was her calm. No guilt, no anxiety, just a quiet confidence, like she had already accepted a new version of her life, and I was still stuck in the old one. The lies weren't dramatic. That was the problem. They were small, unnecessary, and strangely sloppy. Things that didn't need lying at all. She'd say she was working late, but her laptop would still be cold when she came home. She'd mention grabbing dinner with coworkers, yet couldn't remember which restaurant when I asked. Timelines stopped lining up. Stories changed slightly, depending on the day. Not enough to start a fight, but enough to make my stomach tighten. When I pointed out inconsistencies, she didn't panic. She didn't even defend herself properly. She'd shrug and say, "Why are you interrogating me?" That's when I realized something important. She wasn't afraid of getting caught. The lies weren't built to protect me from pain. They were built to save her from inconvenience. There was no urgency to be believable, no effort to reassure me, just enough words to move past the moment. Looking back, the lack of fear told me everything. People who feel guilt try harder. She didn't. The emotional distance started long before I had proof of anything physical. Conversations became shorter, flatter, functional. She'd answer questions, but never expand. Never ask anything back. It felt like talking to someone who was already mentally checked out. Affection disappeared quietly. No arguments. No clear breaking point. Just a gradual absence. Touch felt optional to her. Eye contact became rare. When I tried to reconnect, she'd act annoyed, like I was asking for something unreasonable. What hurt the most wasn't rejection, it was indifference. She wasn't angry. She wasn't cold in a dramatic way. She just didn't seem emotionally available to me anymore. I remember thinking, maybe this is just a phase. Maybe stress. Maybe time. But deep down, something felt off. It was like I was still married on paper, but emotionally, I was already alone. Later, I understood this truth. The affair didn't create the distance. The distance made the affair possible. By the time she cheated, she had already left me, just not officially. I didn't find out through some dramatic confession. There was no apology, no build-up. I noticed small things first. Messages deleted. Her phone always face down. A sudden password change she brushed off as privacy. My gut started screaming long before I had evidence. One night, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up. A name I didn't recognize. A message that wasn't careful enough. It wasn't explicit, but it was intimate in a way that made my chest tighten instantly. Familiar. Comfortable. Like two people who had already crossed a line. I scrolled. More messages. Jokes I'd never heard. Emotional closeness she hadn't given me in months. That's when it hit me. Not just that she was cheating, but that she had replaced me emotionally first. I didn't feel rage right away. I felt hollow. Calm in a terrifying way. Like something inside me had finally snapped into place. In that moment, denial ended. The confusion stopped. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I was being betrayed, and deep down, I already knew. I confronted her the moment she got out of the shower. My hands were shaking, my voice low but firm. I saw the messages. I know what you've been doing. I expected anger, excuses, maybe even tears. She looked at me like I had asked something trivial. Calm. Detached. Unmoved. Yes, she said simply. I cheated. I felt nothing. I don't regret it. The words hit me like a cold punch. I tried to speak, to ask why, to demand some flicker of remorse, but there was nothing. Her eyes were blank, steady. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to beg forgiveness. She wasn't even going to flinch. She shrugged, almost bored. It's done. I don't owe you guilt. I don't owe you explanations. Move on. In that moment, clarity hit me. This wasn't a marriage in trouble. It wasn't a mistake to fix. It was over long before I realized it. And she felt nothing at all about it. Her lack of guilt was worse than the act itself. I expected anger, shame, anything that showed she understood the pain she caused. But there was nothing. Just calm, casual indifference. I don't feel bad, she said, as if my heartbreak were irrelevant. After hearing her words, I felt a collapse I couldn't hide. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it hollowed me out. The shock faded, leaving only the raw weight of realization. She hadn't just cheated, she had erased any meaning our life together had for her. I replayed her calm admission over and over. I don't feel bad. It's already done. I don't owe you anything. Each repetition struck like a hammer, stripping away the denial I had clung to for months. I wanted to argue, to cry, to make her see the damage she caused. But I knew it would be pointless. She would feel nothing. The collapse wasn't just grief, it was clarity. I had been investing my energy, my trust, my love, in someone incapable of empathy. For the first time, I understood, holding on, begging, explaining, it would never bring her remorse. The marriage wasn't just ending. It was already over. And she didn't care. The decision to stop chasing her didn't come suddenly. It came in the quiet aftermath of that confrontation. The adrenaline faded, leaving only a cold, stark reality. I had been pleading for someone who wouldn't care. Every explanation, every hope for apology, every argument had been wasted on a person incapable of guilt. I sat alone and let the truth settle. She wasn't going to change. She wasn't going to feel remorse. And no amount of my pain would matter to her. That clarity, as painful as it was, brought relief. For the first time in months, I felt control returning, not over her, but over myself. I decided I wouldn't explain, plead, or beg anymore. My energy, my love, my respect, they belonged to me, not to someone who refused to recognize my worth. Walking away wasn't surrender. It was the first act of self-respect I had allowed myself in years. Distance became my armor. I stopped expecting her to feel anything, stopped hoping she would change, stopped giving her the power to hurt me further. Every interaction became measured, stripped of emotion. When she tried to provoke guilt or pull me into arguments, I stepped back, silently observing instead of reacting. Detachment didn't come instantly. At first, it felt empty, painful, like surrender. But gradually, it became freedom. I no longer defined my worth by her actions. I stopped letting her indifference dictate my emotions. With distance, I could see the truth. The marriage had already ended emotionally long before I discovered her affair. The betrayal was complete, but I no longer carried its weight. I began to focus on myself, reclaiming the life and dignity I had been surrendering in silent hope she might feel something she never would. Walking away emotionally was the first real act of self-respect. Looking back, everything is clear now. Cheating hurts, but cheating without guilt is the final betrayal. Her affair wasn't just physical. It was the emotional death of our marriage, a brutal reminder that love without empathy is hollow. I spent months hoping she would feel remorse, but some people never do. Believing otherwise only prolongs suffering. The lesson I learned, and the advice I'd give anyone in a similar situation, is simple. When someone cheats and feels no guilt, believe them. Don't waste energy begging, explaining, or hoping for recognition of your pain. Self-respect begins the moment you stop trying to force someone to care. I stopped chasing. I stopped explaining. And slowly, I began to rebuild myself. Walking away from someone incapable of remorse isn't giving up. It's the bravest act of respect you can offer yourself.